LaMelo Ball makes a trip out to Greensboro and back. The Hornets lose to the Lakers. Why are they so bad in the third quarter? Plus, Sacramento looks like they are on the verge of a fire sale. Should the Hornets get involved? All that today and more on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Welcome in. This is Locked On Hornets, your daily podcast on the Charlotte Hornets. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm Doug Branson. You can find more of my work on everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm also an associate producer of Yahoo Sports Daily every day on sports.yahoo.com. Going solo today, usually joined by Walker Mail of WFNZ, Wesson Walker, 12 to 3. He is on the broadcast for the Charlotte versus Davidson college game. And then tomorrow, you're going to get me solo again because Walker is going to be on the Charlotte Hornets broadcast when they get ready to take on the Milwaukee Bucks, and then Walker will be back later in the week. So we're splitting up the schedule this week, but we will get back together next week to talk about everything Hornets. So I got a lot of show here. We've got a lot of comments from the Sicko Brigade that I need to get to around LaMelo's injury status. I've got an interesting, not really an update, but an interesting perspective on the Brandon Miller injury to his shoulder subluxation. We'll get to that in just a moment. And then later on in the show, I want to talk about this Lakers game. I haven't talked to you since the Hornets lost to the Lakers by 10, 121 to 111. Some interesting things there with Con Knipple almost getting the triple-double, but also I got a question on the Every Hornets Box Score chat asking why the Hornets get so beaten up, or at least this version of the Hornets, sans LaMelo Ball, sans Brandon Miller. Why does this version get so beat up in the third quarter? So we'll get to that a little bit later in the show too. But first, LaMelo Ball. He is the center of the Charlotte Hornets universe. He was the center of the commercial for the new jerseys, and yet we haven't seen him in a Charlotte Hornets jersey in a little bit, and it's going to continue as he's already been declared out of Wednesday's game versus Milwaukee, still dealing with right ankle impingement, an injury that was supposed to be addressed by an offseason surgery, but still lingering with LaMelo Ball. You know, so often we talk about when players have surgeries and you get the press release after and it says, this was a successful surgery, and everyone makes the same joke, which is, when has there ever been an unsuccessful surgery? It just seems like they are always successful. Well, sometimes there are some procedures that you have to wait and see what the recovery is like, what the rehab is like, and what results for the player on the other side. And right now, what the result is for LaMelo Ball is that he is missing basketball games, and the result for the Charlotte Hornets is that they are losing basketball games because they are struggling to keep pace offensively enough to counter some issues that they have defensively. And that's exactly what happened against LA. And some people, including Roger from the 23rd Man Division on the Sicko Brigade, texting me and saying, hey, Doug, what's up? What do you think about LaMelo being assigned to the Greensboro Swarm? So, yeah, this was news. Both he and Mason Plumlee were sent to Greensboro to practice with the Swarm and then were recalled earlier today. They were recalled back to the team. This isn't like, I don't think we've ever seen this with LaMelo. I don't know if this is terribly unusual, at least lately in the NBA. I think we even saw LeBron James get a very quick, hey, we're sending you down to practice with a G League team. We did get an explanation from the team. Essentially, they said that they wanted to get LaMelo Ball some live practice opportunities against actual basketball players, as opposed to what he has been doing, which is just warming up, playing against coaches. So, and in the NBA, there's very little time in between the games for actual like organized practices. I think in Greensboro in the G League, you have a little bit more flexibility there. So we've seen players in the midst of their recovery. In fact, I think I recall this with Brandon Miller in particular, getting an opportunity as he maybe came back from the injury that he had early in the season, not the wrist injury that would end his season last season, but the injury, the torn, I believe it was a torn glute that he had earlier in that season. That maybe there was a G League assignment there as he recovered from that. So, not terribly unusual, although we haven't seen this from LaMelo. What has been, I think, more unusual or more curious than the Greensboro assignment has just been the amount of words that we've heard from Charles Lee on the injury and what they're doing and how they're dealing with it, and any kind of clarity on timelines. And really there hasn't been any clarity, and it's been a lot of words, but it's all been about maximizing their ability to play basketball games, through the season. And so I guess you could read between the lines and say, perhaps the team is being conservative, or perhaps LaMelo Ball is being conservative about his ability to get back out on the floor. There is no clarity and there is no solid reporting on what the actual issue is. And if LaMelo is truly like in a position where he could give it a go, maybe not at 100%, but he could give it a go. So without that clarity, you're going to have speculation, particularly with a player in LaMelo Ball that has the extensive injury history that he has. There's no question. I'm very clear. One thing I do have clarity on is that frustration has reached a boiling point with his absence from the team, particularly when there's no solid injury that we're talking about. There's not an ankle sprain. There's not a broken ankle. There's not an injury where you go, yep, that's an injury that players have, and I know about that, and now this is what happens. This is how many weeks he's out. This is, the frustration is boiling over. I see it, and I've been covering this team for nearly 10 years now. So we've gone through a myriad of injuries with Nick Batum and Gordon Hayward, and now LaMelo Ball, and honestly Brandon Miller too. And you see this sort of timeline of the comments section and fans, and now we have the subtext line, join subtext.com/Lockdown Hornets, and you just see this timeline of, all right, we're willing to give some benefit of the doubt here. Injuries happen, injuries suck. We want to see this player get back 100% healthy. Don't take any chances. This guy's part of our future. And then like 2 or 3 injuries later, or particularly when you have these issues that are surrounded in, mysteries, the enigma injuries, that's when I think you've seen this frustration being like, all right, I'm either like, this guy has to get back out on the floor soon, or I'm just done with this altogether. I understand the talent, the immense talent that LaMelo Ball represents. I understand that I also understand that he's a big part contractually of what the Hornets are obligated to under the salary cap. And so like all of the money that's devoted to LaMelo cannot be devoted anywhere else. And if he's not going to play, then that's doing serious damage. It's also doing damage to just your ability to like fairly evaluate the young talent that you have on your team right now. And so I think at this point, you're just seeing more and more frustration build on that. And then I got this other interesting comment, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, by the way. Leave them in the comments. Where are you with LaMelo Ball, and his status as a future Charlotte Hornet? So I got this interesting note from a subtext. This is Bam Bam of the 21st Ricky Pierce division, aka the Flying Big Paper Daddies, who says, as a person who's had shoulders with instability for years, I fully expect Brandon to be out longer than we hope. Multiple subluxations, torn labrums, 2 shoulder surgeries, and way too much physical therapy makes me believe Brandon will either sit longer to strengthen smaller shoulder muscles to help stabilize the shoulder joint, or he'll be completely out for the season because he has torn something and requires season-ending surgery. Remember, the shoulder joint is like a sock. Once it loses its proper shape, you have to take drastic actions to get it back to a new normal, and sitting out doesn't solve the problem. Well, first of all, Bam Bam, thank you for sharing that on the subtext line and continuing to support this show by being part of the Sicko Brigade. And so understanding that, and I don't know for sure that Bam Bam is a medical professional or not. I'm certainly not a medical professional. And Bam Bam, his experiences and everything are unique to him. And Brandon Miller, we know shoulder subluxation, but that's all we know. And we don't have access to the medical reports and never will. And so, a lot of this are the kinds of things that get discovered later on. But yeah, I think it's interesting that he's continued to be out, that they continue to try to rehab this thing to get him in a play. And I do think it's about avoiding surgical intervention, but I don't think that you can rule that out. I think that's what's important, is that to say, well, he's not going to have surgery this year. I don't think that that's something that you can rule out at this point, which would nearly be, if not certainly be, season ending for him. And then you have to have all kinds of difficult conversations about, like, what's his development curve now? Is his body going to hold up? How will it affect the inevitable second contract discussions that come up? And how do the Hornets approach their future when the two young players that they were really hinging everything on suddenly are not even suddenly with LaMelo, but suddenly with Brandon are big question marks. All right, we'll continue to tackle that in the coming days, in the coming weeks, in the coming years. It doesn't seem like any of this injury stuff is going away, but coming up, I do want to talk about this loss against the Los Angeles Lakers. 10-point loss, good first half, bad second half, and a lot of people are saying, hey, why are the Hornets getting shellacked in these third quarters? I'll tackle that. Plus, Sacramento, the Kings, it seems like from reports that they are looking to move and groove down to the basement of the Western Conference. They don't have very far to go, but they've got some players that they have to move should the Hornets get involved in DeRozan, in Levine, and a guy we've talked about a lot, Sabonis. I'll give you my thoughts coming up here on Locked On Hornets. This episode of Locked On Hornets is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA, it's back. It's in full gear. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Did you bet on two buzzer beaters in the same state, Miami and Orlando, plus just a ton of other crazy action going on? Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. And I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone to keep your same number and contacts. If you're ready to say yes to saying no, make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on the unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Back here, hanging out with you solo here on Locked On Hornets. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day, and also for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Really appreciate your support. All right, let's dig into this Lakers loss. So Hornets lose 121-111. They fall to 3-7 on the season. Los Angeles just keeps on cooking. They're 8-3 now. This was not a loss that was unexpected. They made a good first half run at things. The Charlotte Hornets did, particularly the ball movement looked really excellent. I thought the defensive plan on Luka Doncic, just to slow his pace a little bit. They don't have a stopper that is skilled enough. I don't know that many teams, there might be only 1 or 2 teams that really do. But they weren't going to stop Luka Doncic unless they just got lucky and Luka wasn't feeling well or something. But he was feeling fine, and he was hitting step back threes left and right. But they were slowing his pace a little bit. And I thought giving him if he did put the ball on the floor and drive, I thought that they did a great job of responding to that, of staying attached to the guys that were out on the wing and taking a few of his passing options away and doing their best to hang with DeAndre Ayton and stop, the relentless alley-oops. That got exposed later in the game in the second half, but in the first half, I thought they did a really good job of that. But the second half was the problem, and you had 15 turnovers for 20 Lakers points. The Lakers beat the Hornets 12-2 on the fast break. Turnovers a big part of that. Second chance, 11-5 in favor of LA. And the big lineup switch was that in the first, you start with Kalkbrenner at center, and because Kalkbrenner had to drop, a lot of those step back threes that Luka hit were part of some pick and roll action that left Luka with space because Kalkbrenner was dropping, right? And so in the second half, you go with Moussa Diabate, who I thought was one of the more impactful players in that first half. Just his energy, his getting the crowd going, what Hornets fans there were to fight the Lakers fans, spiritually, I mean, he was doing a good job just amping them up with his hustle play, his rebounding, his physicality, all the things that we've come to expect from Moussa Diabate. Blocks, he had 3 of those in this game. He was the better center on this night for what they were trying to do. In fact, he had a crazy block on DeAndre Ayton that he was able to turn into offense on the other end of the floor, which he's been doing more of. But you go with him in the second half, and you almost felt that J.J. Redick knew that was going to happen. And so then made the adjustment. All right, Luka or JJ made the adjustment and said, as soon as they saw Moussa step out for the second half, they said, all right, we're going to pound this thing in to DeAndre Ayton, just no questions asked. And they went to work inside. And so the Hornets were in a little bit of a lose-lose situation. You combine that with the fact that on the wing, on the wing and then Luka, it's just a ton of size relative to Trey Mann, Colin Sexton. And so, again, this was a size loss. It was the Hornets don't have their 2 best players loss. And it was you had so much momentum in that first half, and then you end that first half. What was the sequence here? Well, yeah, Austin Reeves misses 2 free throws at the very end of the first half. Offensive rebound for Los Angeles. Luka hits the 3. So you go and Reeves is a 90% free throw shooter. So that's almost a -5 for the Charlotte Hornets. That made it a tie game. Then Miles Bridges goes too early on the shot, looking for a foul. He misses the shot at the rim. Reeves Euros past Con for 2 more. Then Bridges complaining about officiating the broadcast as he leaves the court. I really thought then there was, particularly at the end of the first half, there was a composure loss that then extended itself out into the beginning of the second half. When Miles Bridges started complaining about officiating, I'm like, Miles the team has said, Miles is the veteran leader, not LaMelo. Brandon's not a veteran. They look at Miles. And so if maybe he was able to go into the locker room and settle himself, and that what he said at the, half break. And here's the thing, it might have been true. You could go back and look at the tape of that game and say, I think the free throw disparity, there wasn't really a free throw disparity. But maybe you could go back and look at that and say, maybe he had a point. But I think oftentimes you've got to be able to put that away. And we say this all the time with LaMelo and Luka. I mean, they say that, Luka, they blamed Luka for losing a playoff series because he couldn't put his emotions in check and settle down and go win a basketball game. And I think good teams are going to expose that. It brings me to the question that I got a lot of in the chat, and I think a few subtexters, a few sicko brigaders out there asked me about this too. Like, why are the Hornets so bad right now in the third quarter? And it is a right now thing. It's this version of the Hornets without LaMelo and Brandon, because if you look on the season, the Hornets actually have just a little bit a notch below into the negative 0.4 net rating in the third quarter on the season. That puts them at about average in the league. But in the last 5 games, 4 of those being without LaMelo, minus 29.2 in the third quarter. That's next to last in the association. You move to the fourth quarter, minus 8.8. That's 27th in the league on the year. And then minus 12.3. That's actually 25th in the league net rating over the last 5 games. The Hornets also not doing well in the first quarter, 18th in the league at a negative 3.4 net rating. Why are they getting beaten in the third quarter and in the first quarter? Well, I think you can go to the starting lineups are not doing well. And that's both the LaMelo starting lineups and the non-LaMelo starting lineups. Both of those lineups are getting blitzed, and probably for different reasons. I think most of them being different reasons, but one of the main reasons that is similar is defensively. They have a difficult time, particularly out on the wing. If things get to Kalkbrenner and Kalkbrenner is down low, you can get a block. But it's been difficult for the Hornets to stop teams from getting the 3-point shot looks that they want. And then particularly in the third quarter, I think when you're a team that's talent deficient and then you lose your best player, you really lose an ability to adjust to the other team. And the team has a better ability to adjust to you. And I think that's what we saw. Like, what we saw against LA was Charles Lee trying to play chess a little bit with the Musa move. And it made sense, but it was just one that was just easily adjusted to by the Lakers. And so I think that's a factor when you don't have an advantage creator like LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller on the floor, guys that can go and really confidently, consistently generate shots that are difficult to defend. It's going to be hard for you to consistently put up good offensive efforts. The ball movement was great in the first half, but it's really difficult to maintain that. And in the second half in the game against LA, I thought a lot of the offense, the shot selection was bad in the third quarter. A lot of it devolved into late shot clock opportunities for Colin Sexton, for Miles Bridges. Only one shot attempt for Con Knipple, and Con Knipple drives so much of the ball movement. When he gets the ball in the middle of the floor, the way he can keep his dribble. He talked about it after the game. He's been working a lot individually with coaches on where he picks the ball up. So on his dribble, he talked about in college and at Duke, it was very much it was all high pickups, and high pickups, Generally you do that against smaller defenders, and you're going to be against more smaller defenders. Particularly if you're like an NBA body, which Con had an NBA body, like you're going to be against guys that are smaller than you. That's when you want to pick the ball up high. You go low pickup. You pick as you're picking up your dribble to make your move, you're picking it up at your ankles to prevent some of these bigger guys from swiping at it, knocking it out of your hands. So Con has had to make that adjustment and continues to make that adjustment to read that when he makes his move. But I think he's making it very quickly, and he's doing a great job of not turning it over there. It's really been on the pass decisions that I think a majority of his turnovers are coming on. So saying that, like, he generates so much of the ball movement and it just wasn't happening there in that third quarter. So, a lot of those things, I think the Hornets devolve, particularly when they get counterpunched. They devolve offensively and get a little simplistic, and that's going to happen, tends to happen towards the beginning of towards the third quarter. That to me is like young team, immature team, learning team, inconsistent team that hasn't had their best player in the lineup for more than 15 games, in a very long time, like no identity. That's the thing that people say, like, this team doesn't have an identity. Well, like it's when you don't have an identity, it's very difficult to maintain that level of play through 48 minutes, and you're going to get blitzed at some point when the other team adjusts. All right, coming up on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Everywhere. Let's talk about this Sacramento situation. The Kings, they're looking to abandon ship. Really, they're tossing things over the ship, trying to shed weight as they look to get worse in the Western Conference. Should the Hornets pull their boat alongside the SS Kings and throw a life raft out to one of these players and bring them on board? We'll talk about it coming up on Locked On Hornets. Today's episode of Locked On Hornets is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? I'll do it solo. I don't need Walker here to do Game Time. Basketball season, it's officially here. Nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games, but let's be real. Getting tickets can be a total headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices that jump right before you go to check out. Oh my, nothing makes me more upset than when that happens. You get right to the checkout and it's like, bang. All of a sudden, it's like, did they know? It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in. None of that applies. The app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I use Game Time to grab seats, not only just for the NBA. I use it to get tickets for all kinds of events here in Nashville, the city that I currently reside. A lot of music events here in Nashville. I don't know if you heard. It couldn't be simpler. I get great seats, and I get them in minutes. Their zone deals are a game changer. You pick the section, Game Time picks your seats, and you save big. You can even find NBA tickets for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. This episode is also brought to you by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Back here on Locked On Hornets, thanks so much for making us your first listen every day and for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network. All right, so a lot of news happening in the NBA. Nico Harrison gets the boot from the Dallas Mavericks. So all of a sudden, that 2027 pick that owned by the Charlotte Hornets from the Dallas Mavericks. It's top 2 protected. Not looking so bad. That's been a little bit of a roller coaster pick for the Charlotte Hornets. It looked good after the Luka trade, and then they get Cooper, and you get Anthony Davis, and you're like, oh, well, I don't know. And now, all of a sudden, it's looking like maybe could be, unless they get really, really bad, could be actually a great pickup for the Charlotte Hornets. Or could it be a tool to use in a potential trade, say with the Sacramento Kings, who are looking to tear things down, and they've got a lot of veteran support, a lot of players that are having down years right now, and maybe how much of that is their player performance and where they are on the trajectory of their career, and how much of that is the scenery there in Sacramento, which has been miserable for a very long time, but particularly since they made the move to send De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio. Things have gotten pretty dark there in Sacramento. And now they are finally saying, all right, or at least the reports are that they're saying, all right, it's time to move on, break this team up, and get as many picks as we can and start over in the next few years. So DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, probably not Russ Westbrook, but Sabonis, Malik Monk. Do you want to go a second round with Malik Monk? Keon Ellis also in the mix there. Who would you like? I'm interested in the comments on this one. What makes the most sense for you? Like, I don't think they're going to move on from any of their young players. So Devin Carter, the guy that they just drafted, Max Reynaud, Nick Clifford. I don't think that any of those guys are in the mix here. To me, there's really only one name that makes some sense. Maybe you look at Keon Ellis, 6'5" wing, 25 years old, low usage wing. I don't know. Does that name excite you? Does that do anything for the Charlotte Hornets long term? Could they turn him into something? Maybe. But I think the one name that you're going to target here is not DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine might even be impossible to trade, even if you're going to fire sale. And it would blow the books up. So would Sabonis, but Sabonis would immediately become your best big, a big body and a big offensive presence that could make up for some of the, particularly if you thought Brandon Miller was going to be done for the year and you wanted to do something that represented competing. Could you go and get Sabonis? And I don't even mean for like a Sabonis LaMelo swap. I'm talking if they're in fire sale mode, I don't think they're going to be interested in taking back LaMelo Ball and the almost equal money in years that it would take, that it would put on Sacramento's books. So at this point, you're talking about some package that looks like Miles Bridges, Pat Connaughton, and like Antonio Reeves or something. I mean, it would just be like, I think Bridges and Connaughton get you right to the line, and then you've got to, but and then I think you're saying, all right, if the Hornets don't want to sacrifice one of their own young players, which I don't think that they would want to do for Sabonis, then I think 29 years old, already been an all-star 3 times, can be, again, not a great start to this year, dealing with a ribcage issue, which doesn't appear serious, but can be a 20, 12, and 6 guy. Could Charles Lee maximize him on the defensive end of the floor? Could you move Kalkbrenner for a year or two to the backup center role where his deficiencies with his foot speed would be way less impactful than it is in the starting lineup where he got played off the floor against LA? Like Sabonis may hurt you occasionally on defense, but he's not going to get played off the floor. Well, not until you get into some kind of like playoff scenario, but the Hornets are nowhere near that. Sabonis is the kind of player that would put them nearer to that. And again, if you get LaMelo and Sabonis together and you're moving Miles, so Miles is really, I think it would be your 4th option if everyone was healthy. but third option. And then, you're talking about a guy in Sabonis that I trust more with the ball in his hands once he's facilitated to, than someone like Miles Bridges in a clutch situation. So, yeah, I mean, look, again, tough start to this season, but in the past couple of seasons, he's been in the 86th percentile in points per shot attempt last season, 75th percentile, 84th percentile. So really in the past 3 full seasons, he's peaking right now. So you're getting a guy entering the prime, and you're going to have that player under contract for the next 3 or 4 seasons easily. And probably someone that if you would be someone that you could eventually move if you wanted to. So, I think Sabonis, look, I mean, great passer too. I think that's something that you're not getting really at all with Kalkbrenner. Musa, like a tiny bit. But it's really difficult for a team to move the ball at an elite level if not a single one of your bigs can hit a 3 or pass. And Kalkbrenner, once he gets the ball, he's gonna try to score that thing. He's not looking for the kick out immediately, and so that may come, But that Sabonis, I think, gives you time to let Kalkbrenner cook, let him develop off the bench, and then you can use Musa in that case as more of a Swiss Army knife. So, what would it? The question then would be how fire saley are the Sacramento Kings looking to get? Would you have to give up one of your young players? I wouldn't advise the Hornets to do that, particularly with how all these guys have played. Not even Lee McNeely. I think you got to see all 4 of these rookies. I think you have to see it out with them. But if you could utilize Miles's contract, Pat Connaughton, we said when Pat Connaughton was retained, I think there's some truth to the idea that great locker room guy, effort, he earned it over Spencer Dinwiddie. But I think also you didn't want to lose that $9+ million that could be utilized on a contract. And so this would be an opportunity to use that on how are you going? You're not going to get a Sabonis level player in free agency. If you're going to do something like this, it has to happen in this way, picking up on these opportunities when teams blow it up or a star gets disgruntled. I mean, that's how San Antonio ended up with De'Aaron Fox. Whenever you have an opportunity to pick on the Sacramento Kings, you should do it. And the question is, would they take the Heat pick, or would you want to give up the Mavs pick now? And I joked early in the segment that that Mavs pick looking a lot sexier now. Okay, now, but 2027, that's a couple years away. And you've already got some rumblings within, deep within that story about Nico getting fired, that Mark Cuban is trying to sort of wiggle his way back into influence within the new ownership group, trying to get his guy installed from the Pistons. And so, they could get aggressive and try to get better and try to make sure Cooper Flagg gets early playoff experience. The thing that you kind of want to do when you have a young star. I don't know. The Hornets didn't really do that, but that's a thing you want to do. If you know you have a great star in the making, you try to get that guy into the playoffs as soon as possible. So while that Dallas pick looks great now, maybe you take advantage of that idea. Hey, this is looking great. Rather than roll the dice. Sabonis would be a surefire upgrade at a position right now of absolute weakness for the Charlotte Hornets. All right, I'm interested in what you think. You can text me if you're on the Sicko Brigade subtext, join subtext.com/Lockdown Hornets, or you can leave a comment below. Make sure to like, share with a friend. It says it right there. Subscribe, like, and tell a fellow sicko. Word of mouth. That's how this show grows. We really appreciate it. Listen to Wes and Walker 12 to 3. Listen or watch Walker on the broadcast for this game against the Milwaukee Bucks. By the time you're listening to this, that game will be tonight. And we'll be right back here. I'll be right back here to talk about that game with a recap episode. So check that out here on Locked On Hornets. Until then, go Hornets, go America. Let's swarm Charlotte.